Good afternoon, welcome back to Turbo Tortoise Tech. Sit back, relax, and let us get you gaming on a budget. Welcome to the budget gaming segment for Turbo Tortoise Tech. Now, as we previously mentioned, there will be dual segments, one running for 144Hz and high FPS gaming, and one running for 60Hz and normal kind of everyday computing and gaming. And with that in mind, we have built the little rig that we have over here. I'm absolutely in love with this thing. It's actually really cute little PC that we built for 4,500 Rand, or about $300 US. Now inside this machine we have the kind of basic of the core components, a 1 TB drive, an i5 3570 which is being cooled there by our little Cooler Master cooler, a 964 gig, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 500 watt Antec 80 plus power supply. Now, like I said, all of this has been purchased for about 4,500 Rand. Some of the parts are new, some of them old. So let's get into the build and the benchmarks.
Now, before we get into the benchmarks, just two things to take into consideration. The budget PC is being made for 60 FPS gaming, not 144, and if we compare it to our 144Hz gaming PC in price, it is 86% cheaper. So with that in mind, let's have a look at those benches. Okay, firstly, we are going to start again with pass mark 9. Now this is just for reference because this has obviously come through at a lower cost. It still, however, gets to top 35% overall of PCs. It's top 25% on CPU and top 17% for 3D. So this is really going to be the platform for our gaming that we are going to be seeking with this computer. The machine, however, can do some limited kind of development and that kind of stuff. It still has multi-core, so it still does a 493. It is going to be less than 30% of what we see from our big daddy Ryzen, so it's not really kind of purposed for that. But the nice takeaway from it is the single core performance, which is what aids us with gaming and giving us good frame rates. Now looking at BF1 Ultra, we see a very workable 51. Shooting for 60 means that you probably only have to drop anti-aliasing a bit to get it to play on Ultra, which is really cool. It is also quite stable. It wasn't jumping around too much, and it's overall the performance, especially when I dropped it a little bit, was quite nice. Looking at CSGO, we see an average of 178 with the lows coming once again from that heavy smokestack, so it is going to struggle a little bit if there is a lot of smokes in play, but overall you should be seeing about 150 to 200 FPS on your net graph there. Looking at Dirt 4, we see it being very playable on high. Unfortunately, Ultra is just going to be too much. It's going to fail underneath that like an ant trying to lift a house, I'm afraid. But this is more consistency with Dirt 4 High just being the PC breaker that it is, or Dirt 4 Ultra at least. Looking at Doom 2016 Ultra, we see a very playable 82 FPS, so you can play this game on Ultra with a 60Hz monitor, absolutely no problem. Dota 2 Ultra, once again the goodness of the Volvo engine, giving us a 105 through the full particle benchmark that we had there before, so that's going to be completely playable. Looking now again to Metro Last Light, we see actually a really surprising 54 FPS coming through on the average, so it actually doing almost as good a job as our R9 390 did in the last test. I can't help but feel that may have been due to some temperature issues that I had with the R9 390, but we'll give full credit where credit is due to the little 962 gig, which manages a heroic score here. It did have a few hiccups in the beginning as we look at the graph here for Metro Last Light. However, it's very clear that it was stable through the latter part, and I can't help but feel that's down to the spinning disc that's sitting in this machine. As we look now at Overwatch on Epic, we see a very playable 81 frame rate, which is just superb coming through from the little 960. So it does a massively good job for games like Overwatch that are extremely polished and well optimized. This is one thing that is really good about Blizz, is the fact that they do polish their games to this kind of extent. Everybody's favorite jump in and shoot a PUBG. We see a measly 31 coming through from the little budget PC. You will have to drop everything to low here, I'm afraid, kids, because unfortunately it's not going to cut the mustard when it comes to playing this woefully optimized title. Having a look at Quake Champions Ultra, we see a very impressive 81. So for 60 FPS gaming, this is going to be absolutely fantastic. Once again, id Tech optimizing that engine and polishing it to the nth degree. Having a look now at UNIGINE Superposition, we see the poor little 962 gigs of VRAM getting absolutely thumped by this test. It is quite vicious, but once again the frame rate didn't fluctuate, so while it was getting squashed, it got squashed very evenly, which was good to see. Something surprising though about the 4K results is it actually improved slightly, and I thought that it would be more of the same. So it shows perhaps that the Superposition Extreme is a little bit extreme when hardware differences are concerned. Those changes follow into the Heaven benchmark results as well, them being 3 to 4% better than what we saw with the heavy extreme 1080p test. Now looking at Vermintide 2 Extreme, something that is actually optimized on the Unreal Engine, we see a 41 frame rate, so it can't quite handle that. It wasn't really a nice looking playing experience as I was watching the benchmark, so that didn't look too good. I did notice when it dropped to high, it did get a bit better, but really we want medium, and that's where our FPS spiked all the way up to 81 on the average frame rate, so that's going to be a lot better and a lot more enjoyable to play. This is a good test for any kind of Unreal game. I would say would be playable on medium with these kind of frame rates. As we do drop to low and lowest, we do see that FPS getting even better, but on lowest it's kind of akin to playing the game with a sock over your head. It's kind of what it looks like when you're trying to look at it, or like pantyhose or something. It's terrible. Having a look at ICESTORM Extreme, I did actually bench this for the 1070 Ti. The R9 just wouldn't complete it for some other reason, but we do see that the scores are actually not that far apart when we look at FPS. There is a big difference between Graphics Test 1 and Graphics Test 2 here, where Graphics Test 2 went up with the other card and it went down with this one, which is just a little bit interesting. Moving on to CloudGate, we see an overall 66% trend, which is actually quite uniform throughout the remainder of the scores. The graphics faring a little bit better and the CPU faring a little bit worse, but that's kind of within expectation. Similarly, looking at SKYDIVER quickly, we see very similar kind of results. The physics does start off actually quite strong, especially with the 8 thread, but as the threads increase, it will get worse and worse due to not having that hyper-threading technology. Now for FIRESTRIKE, my favorite 1080p gaming test, and kind of gives you an overall perspective of what your performance differences are going to be like. Now this is actually 10% worse off than what our overall percentages were off. So I think that is quite interesting. We are including CPU as well as GPU in this overall PC performance. So perhaps it's more, this speaks more to GPU differences than CPU differences. We see the physics test being 70% less, whereas the graphics tests were about 60% less than what we saw with our big boy. So kind of factoring that in, I think it is consistent to say that the differences that we see here are mostly graphical, especially with our score being exactly 64% along with all of our graphics scores. So the physics actually doesn't offset the score in FIRESTRIKE that much, which is kind of good to see. Having a look at the remainder of the benchmarks, I didn't do FIRESTRIKE Extreme and FIRESTRIKE Ultra because I actually quite like this little PC. I thought it was cute and I didn't want to break it, and I thought that it would just be embarrassing to even post those scores. I did, however, do TIMESPY just to kind of humor myself to see how close it would be to FIRESTRIKE, and without surprise, these scores are actually quite close to each other. Okay, so without further ado, all things considered, it does mean that this PC is going to be 55% of the main rig's total power.
Alrighty, so as you guys can see, it's more than capable of 60 FPS gaming. It is a lot cheaper than going out and buying a brand new console, albeit with some concerns as far as warranty goes. However, with the current climate on the after of the mining craze, it is a very good time to buy second-hand equipment that is still new, especially if it's still got some warranty with the manufacturer. So with that in mind, we will be continuing this segment and looking for the absolute best in budget gaming. Hey guys and girls, if you did enjoy the show, please do like and subscribe and hit the little bell notification so you will know when the insanity is happening back here at Turbo Tortoise Tech. Gain a couple of IQ points, lose a bit of sanity. Anyway, who's counting? Enjoy us for the next one.